О, точно на време съм.
Hey. All right, welcome to Starbase.
Така. Алекс Сташ, добър вечер.
So it's been
Ползвам
almost 2 years since our
OBS
last update,
Studio.
and a lot has happened since then. But I'm getting like a strange audio feedback. I don't know.
Screen
Do I
capture.
sound okay to you guys?
Пък
Okay, great.
от рекламите си
So it's been 2
взимам
years
нищо, трябва да събере
since
голямо
we had
количество
our
пари за да
first
ги стегля.
Mark 1 rocket.
Взимам по левче на месец.
And
Вече до 2
a lot has
години,
happened since then.
може би.
We're going to go through the progress, but I'm just incredibly proud of the SpaceX team and all the support that we received from Cameron County, from Brownsville, from South Padre. And I know some of you in the audience, so thank you very much for your support. So.
Рано или късно това ще го гледат хора на запис, за това да кажа, че
before we jump
целият
into the
тук,
details of
той е основна част от
what's happened
това
over the past 2
преживяване.
years, I think it's worth just talking a bit about this, like why are we doing this? You know, this, I mean, pretty epic, but what's the sort of deep meaning behind this? Like, why build a giant reusable rocket? Why make life multi-planetary? And I think this is just an incredibly important thing for the future of life itself.
Илон Мъск изнася презентация за
And there's both
най-важната ракета, която човечеството може би някога е правило, защото е единствената, която има истински потенциал да
defensive reason or the life insurance reason. That's one part of it, which is that there's always some chance that something could go wrong on Earth. The dinosaurs are not around anymore. So, there could be some calamity that we do ourselves in, or there's a natural disaster. Now, I'm naturally an optimist, so I think the probability of that is low, but it is not zero. And eventually, the sun will expand. It might take a few hundred million years, so don't hold your breath. But eventually, the sun will expand and destroy all life. So for those who really care about not just the humans, but all the life on Earth, it is very important, essential, that over the long term, that we become a multi-planet species and ultimately even go beyond the solar system and bring life with us. And, you know, we are life's stewards, life's guardians. The creatures that we love cannot build spaceships, but we can, and we can bring them with us. And I think that's pretty important, for those that care about the environment and care about all the creatures on Earth. So that's like I would say like the defensive or the life insurance reason for life collectively. But there's also an inspiring reason, which is that life can't just be about solving problems. There have to be things that inspire you, that move your heart, that make you glad to be, when you wake up in the morning, you're excited about the future. And going out there and being a multi-planet species and being a spacefaring civilization and making science fiction, not fiction forever, I think that's one of those things. You know, I think that's what fires me up the most. Is like, let's go out there and find out what this universe is all about. You know, are there other species out there? Maybe. You know, hopefully it's. I mean, we want to go find out what the heck's going on. What is going on? I mean, how do we get here? What's the meaning of life? 42. But what's the question? And you know, if we go out there and we explore the the galaxy,
това, което обяснява в момента, може да се сведе до един проблем, който противниците на космическите полети имат. Противници не просто на Спейсекс, на космическите полети и това е защо ще ходим някъде, след като има толкова много влак по Земята и ние сме съсипали собствена си планета. Истината обаче е, че съсипане на планета е нещо, което всеки сам си преценя, защото аз не виждам Земята как да се съсипа на какъв и да е начин. А пък не е реалистично да очакваме да разрешим световния глад преди да отидем където да бъде, защото винаги все някой гладен ще има и ние все в някой момент трябва да го направим. В момента нивото на гладни хора е сведено до толкова, че да се заслужава. Отгоре всичко това ще отвори доста работни места. И космическите изследвания тенденциозно през годините са давали страхотна полза за земляни, тъй като нови технологии било то от страна на електрониката или от страна на изследване на лекарства в космоса, тези това не е някаква голяма загуба за нас.
I'd say like more than 99% of our resources should be oriented towards solving problems on Earth. So it's important to note that like NASA's annual budget is only 0.36% of the federal budget. And in fact, of the national GDP, it's less than a tenth of a percentage point. So it's like we're only spending 0.1% of our resources on space. I think that's okay. Like we'll be fine. So just make sure people don't think like, well, is he suggesting that we just spend everything on space? No, I'm suggesting like maybe 0.5% or something like that. We'll probably be okay. And I think given this establishing security for life itself and having an exciting future and inspiring kids about the future, I think it's worth it, basically. Yeah. So, well, how do we do this? How do we make life multi-planetary? What's the first step? And the essential technology, the holy grail breakthrough that's needed, is a rapid and completely reusable rocket system. So this has never been accomplished before. And there's a lot of people for the longest time thought this was not possible. Now with Falcon 9, we've been able to show that you can have reuse of the boost stage and reuse of the fairing. So with Falcon 9, we've demonstrated a lot of reuse of the boost stage and of the fairing. We have over 100 reflights of the fairing over of the booster, and I'm not sure of the fairing number, but it's a lot. And that's a big step in the right direction. With Starship, we're aiming for full and rapid reusability. So, we obviously need to accomplish that. That's not done yet, but the success is one of the possible outcomes, which I always think is when embarking on an endeavor, success should be at least one of the possible outcomes. And for this design, that is the case. And we're aiming for rapid reusability, which is why the booster is going to take off and then fly back to the launch tower and aspirationally land on the arms.
Разказва се това, че бустерите ще кацат обратно върху самата кула. Върху самата кула има щипки, които ще ги хващат. И това би било много яко, ако могат наистина да го направят. Дори да го правят с темпото на Falcon 9, пак би било чудесно, защото за момента човечеството много рядко успява да преизползва нещо. Например, двигателите на совалките те са били преизползвани, но доста бавно и сега ще бъдат изхвърлени. congratulate the SpaceX team, and also thank NASA, the FAA, the Space Force, and everyone, and all of our customers that have helped us get to this point. It's insanely hard to get a rocket to orbit. Insanely difficult. I have huge respect for anyone who's gotten a rocket to orbit. It's so hard. And we've had 144 successful launches, 106 landings. Yeah, I mean, actually, these days I have to look on the internet, say, how many landings have we had? I'll have to ask the internet. 83 flight proven launches.
Alex,
although I have to say, I still have like launch PTSD every time the rocket takes off.
Основна част от причината да не се използват много е, понеже няма клиенти. Старшип е доста яка ракета, защото дава възможност да се пращат много големи товари, нещо, което при човечеството винаги било ограничено. Бидейки ограничено, човечеството винаги се стремява към страхотна миниатюризация. Ние на този етап имаме технологията да тъпчем много неща в малко обем и малка наса. Малка маса, тъй че няма клиенти.
If you look at like tonnage to orbit, this
защото в момента човечеството не лети до Луната или до Марс, където се правят клипчета, че би могло.
A rapidly reusable rocket,
в момента пращаме само комуникационни сателити основно.
What effect that has on total tonnage to orbit. So the total mass to orbit to date of Earth is around 15,000 tons, maybe 16,000 tons. And the mass per Starship, after a year, just 1 year of launching, if it launches 3 times a day, would be equal to all the mass to orbit of Earth to date. That's just one Starship launching 3 times a day for a year. Now, if you have, 10 Starships-ish, then, and we'll have more than that. Our goal is to be making at least a 1 stack per month, and then ultimately potentially a ship every 3 days. There'll be more ships than there are boosters because the booster actually, even though it's gigantic, will come back in about 6 minutes. Excitement guaranteed. It only takes about 2 minutes on ascent and then about 4 minutes to return. So you'll know soon. The ship has to complete at least 1 orbit around Earth, and sometimes maybe 3 orbits or more. And each orbit is 90 minutes. So the ship is probably, reusable about every 6 to 8 hours. That's why we say sort of 3 times a day for the ship. But in theory, the booster is capable of being reused every hour. So the propellant pumps are designed to fill the rocket in about half an hour. So this really is designed for rapid reusability. So if you can do roughly 1 million tons to Earth orbit, that's comfortably over 100,000 tons to the surface of Mars. Maybe 150,000 tons, depending on how good the landing system is. So now you can only go to Mars every 2 years. And I think maybe roughly you need about 1 million tons on Mars to have a self-sustaining city. The critical threshold, I think, for Mars is to have a city that is self-sustaining. It's going to be incredibly difficult to make a self-sustaining city because if it's missing any ingredient at all, however minor that ingredient is, then if the ships from Earth stop coming for any reason, the city will die out. So the critical threshold to pass one of the most important great filters for any species is to have have the other planet no longer dependent on the original planet. So I don't know exactly what that tonnage is, but I suspect it is at least, if one tries to get the right order of magnitude, about 1 million tons. Hopefully it's not more than that. Starship is capable of doing that. It's capable of getting 1 million tons of ships to Mars and creating a self-sustaining city. And I think we should try to do that as soon as we can. The window of opportunity may be open for a long time, and I hope it is, but it may also be open for a short time. And this is the first point in the 4.5 billion year history of Earth that it has been possible. I mean, let that sink in. If they're knocking at the door, I mean, it's a sentient sink. Let's face it. Come in.
Алекс ще казва, че без нас Мъск нямаше да може да ги направи тези стъпки. Между другото, това не е съвсем вярно, защото цялото съществуване на Starlink е с цел осигуряване на средства за Спейсекс. Но да, нещата ще стават много по-бавно, Спейсекс не взимаха обществени поръчки. Обаче, между другото, Спейсекс взимат доста ниски обществени поръчки, защото офертите им, тъй като имат преизползваеми ракети, офертите им са много по-евтини. Ситуацията действително е сравнима между това, което SpaceX и това, което говориш за правилата. Едни от тези поръчки са едни лампи, които научихме преди седмица. Няколко пъти по-скъпи са офертите на Blue Origin.
And that's the sales pitch. I hope you like it. So far from being some sort of escape hatch, it will be extremely difficult and dangerous and tough. Mars is a fixer-upper of a planet, and so it's going to take some work to make it easy to live there. But one day we could make Mars a planet like Earth, and I think we should. So, just some facts about Starship, and these numbers will evolve over time. The height of the ship is about 50 meters, 164 feet. The 9 meter or 30 foot diameter. Well, you can just see it basically. It's got about 1,200 tons of propellant on the ship, and thrust is about 1,500 tons. Now these numbers will probably add more propellant over time, increase thrust. Diameter will stay the same. It's a huge pain to change diameter. So that'll tend to stay the same, but it'll probably get a little bit longer. And we're expecting a payload capacity of 100 to 150 tons, depending on which orbit. So to a Starlink orbit, roughly 100 tons. Over time, I think we can probably get the orbit for orbital refilling, the payload to an orbit for orbital refilling to about 200 tons, which is going to be very important for getting to Mars. So for getting to Mars, you also need the orbital refilling. Just like you have aerial refueling, the rockets will need orbital refilling. It's actually mostly oxygen. There's 3.5 tons of oxygen for every 1 ton of fuel. So that's why it's refilling, not refueling. So heat shield. So this is the world's largest heat shield. This is, we actually make this at our little factory in Florida near Cape Canaveral. We call it the bakery. And we're actually using a lot of techniques that are used for roofing tiles. So we need to have a heat shield that is capable of resisting extreme heat, but also is not crazy expensive. And our heat shield team has done amazing work in creating the world's largest heat shield, and one that is reusable, but also robust and low cost. So it's not a crazy heat shield.
Трябва американската публика да го разбира.
Need good heat shield technology for entering from orbit. Orbital refilling. We were going to do an animation of this, but it looked a bit wrong. It is a fluid transfer. So, yeah. Play a little Barry White, you know. Okay. So that's one of the technologies that is necessary for getting to Mars. So the ship would get to orbit with its payload.
Това обаче знам как да реагирам. Всеки ден.
And then in orbit we'd
и всеки път, когато се опитвам да стримна нещо, нещо крашва.
To get to Mars. Mars is far. So now this is essentially docking in orbit, and with Dragon docking with the space station, this is a technology that that SpaceX has become quite good at. We've done, I think at this point, a couple dozen dockings with the space station, and it's actually way harder to dock with the space station than to dock with yourself. So this is.
SpaceX
it is a thing we need to solve for Starship, and I'm confident that we can do this because we've done a lot of orbital docking already with Dragon. This is going to be an important thing to demonstrate. Won't be necessary in the near term for Starlink launches, but it will be necessary for Mars and the Moon. So let's see, the super heavy booster. So it was 70 meters, but then there was an extra half barrel section that the team deleted, and totally accidentally it's 69 meters. It's also booster 4 and ship 20. I mean, this is a pure coincidence. Those numbers won't leave me alone. It's just, I hope it's good luck. So propelling capacity is like around 3,400 tons. I think it'll probably it will increase over time. Probably get to 36, maybe 3,800 tons. Thrust is around 7,600 tons. That'll probably increase too over time. Just to put this into perspective, though, the Saturn V was 7.5 million pounds of thrust, and Starship is 17. So it's more than twice the thrust of a Saturn V, which was that's the largest rocket ever to get to orbit. It's worth noting Super Heavy is the largest flying object of any kind, or will be.
They're so огромни.
Yeah. Very big. You can see it right there.
Те са страшно големи. Те са по-големи от повечето блокове, които имаме в София. По-високи са и са по-широки даже част от блоковете, които имаме в София.
We actually increased the engine count to 33. We kind of bounced around on engine count.
Когато Роскосмос закачи последния сегмент.
Because I think at one point we had like 37 engines.
Последния сегмент, който в момента са закачили, когато закачиха към станцията преди няколко месеца, направиха един номер, в който се включват двигателите, случайен брой пъти, в случайни моменти, и почнаха да въртят станцията. Не е имало сериозна опасност за астронавтите, обаче това не е добър знак.
This tower from design to construction was 13 months, so it's quite an epic structure. It's really worth emphasizing that the whole launch system, which is basically stage 0, is I'd say as complex and difficult as either the booster or the ship. So I really want to emphasize that this is. And it's a very difficult thing that requires a lot of hardcore engineering. And it's really, like I said, the tower and the launch system, which I call stage 0, is just as important as stage 1 and stage 2. I mean, this is really some wild stuff here. In fact, I mean, hard to believe it's real, except, you know, right there. So, yeah. then Raptor development, Raptor 1 was 185 tons of thrust. Raptor 2 is 230 tons of thrust, and I think over time we can get that to probably 250 tons. So that's, and it's also significantly simplified. So you can see the difference between V1 and V2. The V2 is, V1 looks kind of like a Christmas tree spaghetti pile. A lot of fiddly bits. And V2 is greatly simplified while also increasing thrust at the same time. So it's actually, Raptor 2 costs about half as much as Raptor 1, despite having much more thrust. And I think just generally being a much easier engine to build and a more robust engine. So, very excited about Raptor version 2, and it's only going to get better from here.
Пък го правят с двигатели, които не планират да ползват повече, няма голям смисъл. Това далеч са най-мощните двигатели, които човечеството някой е правилно преляса на яките.
So Raptor 2 is pretty sick. And we've actually, the peak thrust that we've operated Raptor 2 at this point is 247 tons. And so I'm confident that with some improvements we can get to a 250 ton operating point. And continue to simplify and sort of robustify the engine. So it's really it's a spectacular piece of engineering. Extremely difficult to make and succeed. Engine has been mind-bogglingly difficult, but it is one of the essential keys to. It is essential, obviously, to making Starship work. It'll be the first full flow stage combustion engine to get to orbit. Kind of need that ISP and thrust to weight. So why Starbase? A lot of people like to say why Starbase? Why here? And we kind of needed a confluence of factors. Getting to orbit, you want to launch eastward so that you have help from Earth's rotation. So the closer you are to the equator, the more of a sort of a boost from Earth rotation that you get. So you want to be as south as possible and launch eastward. And then, it's always possible that something goes wrong. And so you want to have a good clear area. You want several miles around the launch site to be unpopulated or at least clearable. And that doesn't actually leave a lot of options. It's basically here and Cape Canaveral or Cape Kennedy is where are the other two possibilities. And then because we have had a lot of launches going out of the Cape, we didn't want to disrupt the Cape activity, the operational launches, with sort of the advanced R&D of Starship. So it was important to decouple the operational launches from the R&D launches, and that's why we're at this location. And once again, I'd just like to thank Cameron County and Brownsville, the remaining residents of Boca Chica Village. Where I live, by the way, it's my primary residence, is that little village over there. And it's been great. It's been great being here, and I super appreciate the support of the community.
Се получават нещата. Могат ли там да го стрелват? Да. Просто ги редуват, но ако трябваше там да се спре дейността, за да се строят някакви месеци кули, резервуари, тръбопроводи, това щеше да е кофти.
A video to show what we hope will happen with launch.
А между другото, за това сме се събрали за анимацията, дето са направили. Просто трябваше изчакваме 35 минути.
we have some upcoming Starship missions. Orbital flight is really just the beginning. So we're going to have a number of Starlink missions that will launch Starlink satellite version 2. But even more exciting than that is the NASA human spaceflight mission. We're incredibly honored that NASA has selected Starship to take astronauts back to the moon for the first time in half a century, which is kind of mind-blowing. So, I'd just like to say, like, Spacesix is just deeply honored and appreciative that NASA would choose us for this incredibly important mission, and we'll get it done. And then there's also the Dear Moon mission, which is
как
астронавтите на НАСА ще стигнат до Луната. Но самото каза нещо се извърши в Старшип, сигурно. Какво ти си мисли, че е безус? I think a dozen artists and do a loop around the moon, which will be very exciting. And there's going to be some future announcements that I think people will be pretty fired up about. So, anyway, super exciting future ahead with this. There'll probably be a few bumps in the road, you know, but we want to iron those out with satellite missions and test missions and get to a high flight rate and then have something that's extremely reliable for human spaceflight. So, yeah.
Някой ден тази кула ще изглежда по-добре. Няма да изглежда толкова изкъртено скеле, колкото изглежда сега. Ще облицоват, Спейсекс обичат да правят нещата хубави. Но някой ден. И да, планират да построят повече от една кула. Близо една до друга. Боже, какво е чудовище! Бустера се завърта, заключи двигателите си, за да може да каса там, откъдето е тръгнал. Това го правят в момента с Falcon 9-те. И поне в 2-3 клипчета съм разказал за това. Но няколко пъти трябва да се включи двигателя, за да се обърне, за да навлезе в атмосферата без да се разтопи ракетата и накрая за да касне в щипките. Тъй, че няколко пъти трябва да се включи двигателите. Това е презареждането. Цялата идея е да може чрез презареждане да се получи така, че да имат напълно зареден Старшип в околоземна орбита. Защото той използва собственото си гориво, за да се издигне до орбита, след като се разкачи от бустера, за да може после да отива на интересни места с напълно заредени резервоари. Трябва няколко Старшипа да бъдат изстреляни и да се прехвърлят горивото, докато един не се напълни изцяло. Има 6 двигателя в момента, но Мъск вече е казал, че ще мислят как да ги направят 9, защото си просил да са 9. Но сега, ако кажеш кацане на Марс, ще е толкова яко. Ние много сме свикнали с марсиански изображения, защото сме пратили много сателити, можем да го наблюдаваме с телескопи. Обаче човешки очи никога не са виждали планетата. Поне не и без някакъв огромен телескоп. Такива детайли само на място могат да се видят. Представям си как ще има гласово съобщение метростанция Марс.
Let's make this real. Any questions?
Боже
Let's make this real!
За нефтените платформи. Ами закупили ли си ги? Преправят ги, но за момента нищо съществено не се случва все още.
Anyone? I can't see you, so you probably just have to yell it out or something.
Алекс Таш казва, че е важно богатащите да обикалят Луната.
Yes, there's 6 Raptors on Starship.
Това нещо, с което може да се гласи, наистина е важно.
3 sea level.
Има разлика между това, че Джеф Безос сам на себе си дава медал и
if I would say like we'll probably end up adding another 3
милиардер да изпрати певец, художник и други хора на изкуството до Луната, защото едното действително може да тетови други хора, за да си интересуват космоса и да си представят как това би повлияло на човечеството. Това, което прави Спейсекс с едно от клиентите. Това, което прави Джеф Безос, то може да тетови хора да го мразят повече. Човека
production facility and launch site here, and production facility and launch site at the Cape as well.
И винаги се бута където не му е работа.
It's important to have redundancy.
Или където поне за момента не е заслужител му е работа. Аз мисля за това да говоря. Обаче
I've got lights and eyes, so unfortunately I can't see. I'm blinded. So I can hear where the speaker is coming from.
Okay. But, you should. I believe you're expecting to hear in a couple weeks about the possible finding of no significant impact from the FAA. Have you gotten any indications if that's going to come through, and what is your time frame for the orbital flight test? Thanks.
Well, we don't have. We don't have a ton of insight into where things stand with the FAA. We have gotten sort of a rough indication that there may be an approval in March, but that's all we know.
Това, че не започва да псува в този момент, ме кара да го продължавам доста, защото FAA налагат много ограничения на SpaceX, те в момента не могат да изстрелват нищо. Това е причината ние да сме виждали полети от много отдавна, заради влиянието върху околната среда, което те оказват. Макар че според мен там почти няма животни, някакви пустенурчета, някакви птички.
It might actually be the lowest cost means of transporting cargo
все пак трябва да бъде предпазвана околната среда и защитените видове и защитените територии. И докато FAA Federal Aviation Administration, докато не определят дали ще е безопасно за околната среда, те няма да могат да летят. И това се очаква да стане до 10 седмици.
Quarter or third or halfway around the world, where you know, if you went from, I don't know, say here to Singapore or something, like that's a long flight. So, I mean, I don't know how long that is. I'm not sure you can even go there nonstop, but it's probably 20 hours plus.
Вземе най-сетне да направи хубава ракета, не трябва да забравя, че говорите за по-стара компания от Спейсекс и те не просто не са стигнали до орбита все още, пък какво става да приземят ракетите над 100 пъти. Те не са близо до това да стигнат до орбита. За това може да си харчи парите.
So it's 20 times the capital efficiency. So provided the propellant cost is competitive with aircraft. And bear in mind, like I was saying, like there's 3.5 tons of liquid oxygen for every 1 ton of fuel. And liquid oxygen is basically just the cost of electricity. Because it's in the air, basically. There is a scenario where it's economically compelling to do long-distance cargo and people transport with Starship.
Коментира пътуването от Земята до Земята със Старшип.
And I think that would be great for getting a high flight rate and a business case for supporting a lot of Starships operating. Basically, nothing's faster than an ICBM.
Къде точно е тълпата, но подозирам, че е там. Подозирам, че неговото видео после е по-интересно.
Hands up. Hands up in the...
Дам линк.
I mean, I actually have lights in my eyes, and it's pitch dark in front of me.
It's fine. Hi, Elon. Michael Sheets with CNBC. You opened this presentation by addressing a little bit of the criticism that's been aimed at space travel being seen as maybe a pet project or not really valuable to folks who have problems here on Earth. I was wondering if you could get a little more into the specifics on comparing not just the U.S. government spending that's happening on space travel versus other things, but maybe in terms of SpaceX itself, how you and private investment on a dollar value compares to the taxpayer-funded projects or contracts that SpaceX has won over the years.
6 месеца почивка от това да завежда нови дела и да се дава нови проблеми административни за SpaceX. Само това би било достатъчно. Миналата година Джеф Безос успя да се даде два огромни проблема на SpaceX. Това в комплект с FAA, които ни дават да изстрелват ракети, действително доста забавни нещата. Първото, което направи Джеф Безос като проблем, беше, че НАСА трябваше да определи кой печели обществената поръчка за това да приземява нейните астронавти на Луната и се очакваше да избере две компании, обаче НАСА в крайна сметка избра само една, само SpaceX. Причината е, че бюджета на НАСА е страшно ограничен и SpaceX също са единствената компания, която предлагаха да приземят хора в рамките на бюджета, който отпуска за тази обществена поръчка. Джеф Безос използва страшни манипулации, като това да казва, че докато SpaceX иска почти цялата им ракета да бъде спонсорирана от НАСА, почти всички пари да дойдат от НАСА, Джеф Безос ни говори, че те са склонни да дадат по-голямата част от пари. Което може би не е така. Само дето Джеф Безос планира да прави много неефективна ракета за 10 милиарда, от които 5 ще даде той, 5 ще дадат НАСА. Докато Мъск предлага неговата да струва има-няма 3, и от тези 3 не се повече ще ги дадат НАСА. Поне там толкова беше цялата неговата оферта за обществената поръчка, 2,9 милиарда. И действително НАСА ще трябва да дадат съществена част от парите. Обаче голяма част от цената за суперхелистаршип е много по-малко от половината за потенциалните ракети от Origin, които може би никой няма да летят. Това е един проблем, който се даде. Другия, първо да чуя следващия въпрос.
Starship and what it would cost a customer to buy a flight on one. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I am optimistic that we will get approval. I think objectively, I think this is not something that will be harmful to the environment. We've obviously flown the ship several times and done multiple landings and takeoffs and landings, and we've fired the engines a lot. So I think the reality is that it would not have a significant impact.
Аз също считам, че няма да има голямо влияние върху околната среда, но има неща, които SpaceX не са правили, това е да включат 30 двигателя наведнъж. Това, което са правили до момента е да включат 3 или 6 едновременно. И то дай 6 за кратко, само 3 за по-дълго.
Now we do have the alternative of the Cape,
10 пъти повече си един порядък повече шум. Това ще е изключително глушителна ракета, макар че има системи за намаляване на звука. Това би напрегнало животните доста. Ние тук спряхме фойерверките, те ще направят нещо много, много, много лошо.
I don't know, be delayed for 6 to 8 months to build up the Cape launch tower and launch from there. From a cost standpoint, the costs will improve significantly over time. So, because it'll take us a moment to achieve full reusability and full and rapid reusability, we'll probably lose a few vehicles along the way. You know, with Falcon 9, I think it took us 14 or 15 attempts to successfully land the first booster. I don't think it'll take us that many with Starship because we have that experience, but it's certainly not a sure thing that it'll work the first time.
Има и друга разлика, освен че вече SpaceX е по-опитни, може би няма да отнеме 14-15 провала. Това е...
I mean, it's 100-ton capability to orbit.
Falcon 9.
On a marginal cost to launch basis.
Всичките тези опити за приземяване в началото, които не бяха успешни, бяха с нова ракета всеки път от по-малка компания. SpaceX тогава бяха по-малка компания. Отнемаше месеци между опитите за приземяването. Сега хем са много по-добри, хем могат да строят Старшипа много по-бързо, колкото тогава строяха в Falcon 9. И Супер естествено,
depending on what our launch rate is, we have to divide the fixed cost by the number of launches. So the more launches that happen, the lower the total cost, fully considered cost per flight would be. But I'm highly confident it would be less than $10 million all in over, you know, if you say like fast forward like 2 or 3 years from now. I think it's highly likely to be everything included less than $10 million a flight for 100-ton to orbit capability. And 100 tons to a useful orbit, not to a low orbit. To a low orbit, it would be 150 tons. So this is ridiculously good compared to everything else. And it should be, because you know, if you think of like, if this was if aircraft were not reusable, how much would an air ticket cost? I mean, you know, it's like, you know, for, I don't know what, you know, a 787 or 777 goes for these days. I don't know, a few $100 million. If you had to spend, you know, $200 million every flight, it would be very expensive to fly somewhere, and you'd need 2 of them for, you know, another one for the return trip. So, you know, it would obviously be absurd. So if you can imagine if we were in a world where aircraft were expendable, and then someone came along with a reusable aircraft, it would be an absolutely profound game changer. That's what needs to happen for life to become multiplanetary, and that's what this design, I'm confident, is capable of that. It's just a question of how long it will take to refine that and have it really dialed.
Реши да създаде огромен проблем на SpaceX. Понеже SpaceX искаха да използват орбити, които...
Sorry, this is Andrea Leinfelder of the Houston Chronicle. I wanted to know when and how do you plan to test Starship refueling in space? And also, aside from NASA, Dear Moon, and Starlink, can you elaborate on the potential customer base for Starship? Thank you.
Няма да бъде вземана. Очевидно няма да бъде поставено нещо за нея. За по-голям период, отколкото е продължителността на живота на сателитите, не виждам защо да не го направят.
Sorry. When and...
We have some mic issues.
Okay. When and how do you plan to test Starship refueling in space? Yeah. And aside from NASA, Dear Moon, and Starlink, can you elaborate on potential customers for Starship? Thank you.
I think orbital refilling, and I want to emphasize it is refilling, not refueling, because it's 3.5 times as much oxygen than fuel. So we mostly are carrying oxygen up there. I optimistically, towards the end of next year, I think I'd be surprised if it's longer than 2 years for doing the refilling. And there are a lot of additional customers that will want to use Starship. I don't want to steal their thunder. They're going to make their announcements, and but I think this will get a lot of use, a lot of attention. It's like I said, you know, once we make this work, it's an utterly profound breakthrough in access to orbit. And when you have an utterly profound breakthrough, the use cases will be hard to imagine. I mean, you know, when aircraft first came along, aircraft were viewed as toys, like they were like a novelty, not a means of transport. They were like, oh look, we can fly like a bird briefly and dangerously for a few minutes. You know, nobody at the time, or at least I think very few people at the time, thought that there would be a global aircraft industry with airports throughout the world carrying people to every part of Earth in ridiculously short periods of time. You know, when the Wright brothers first took off, I mean, most people were just riding horses. So you're like, you know, like riding a horse, see this crazy device, looks like witchcraft. And
Спейсекс иска да използват орбити, които са предвидени за спътници на Kuiper, което е компания на Джеф Безос за сателитен интернет. Тези орбити, макар че би трябвало да се използват от Kuiper, те наистина не се. И очевидно не са на път да ги използват скоро. И те могат междувременно да бъдат използвани в SpaceX.
Hi, Elon. This is Steve Clark with the Brownsville Herald. Thank you for the presentation.
Бяха попитали за това. И моментално бяха обвинени от Джеф Безос за това, че унищожава конкуренцията и налагат монопол и какво ли не. А пък
yeah, I mean, it would obviously set us back
такива административни ограничения са по-скоро монопол, отколкото това, че SpaceX действително чрез Starlink са единствения смислен сателитен интернет, който
what do you envision for Starbase, like a spaceport with flights coming and going and Starship manufacturing, or what is the future role of Starbase?
Това да си най-добрия определено не е
антиконкурентно. It's well suited to be kind of like our advanced R&D location. So it's like where we would try out new designs and new versions of the rocket, and then I think probably Cape Kennedy would be our sort of main operational launch site. And then, I don't know, over time, I think there's going to be, we'll have floating spaceports, like ocean spaceports. We got these 2 converted oil rigs that are going to be turned into orbital launch sites. And they can be moved around the world. So, you know, that I think there could be quite a few of those. You know, I think about like, if I think about like what would really work for long distance travel, because the rocket is quite loud, you want to be, you know, I don't know, 20 miles away from a major city or 30 miles away from a major city, just so you don't, you know,
за да не изпотрошиш прозорците на сградите. Ей, това е. Това трябва да споделя.
So I think probably most of the launch sites long term will be ocean or sea spaceports. So like maybe located like 20 miles, 30 miles offshore. And this would allow Starship to connect any cities that are on the ocean or on the sea, and have a high flight rate, but without disturbing people too much. I think people are willing to, have something that's loud occasionally, but if you want to have it frequently, then it probably needs to be offshore.
Hello, Elon. I'm Cam Gerlach with the SpaceX Reddit community. So you've talked a lot about how Raptor 2 is crucially important for Starship development and for the future of Starship. So I'm curious, what general improvements have you made with Raptor 2 to ensure it's not only more efficient and more powerful, but also much easier to produce and less expensive as well and faster? And how do you plan to continue to iterate further on the design in the future?
So, Raptor 2 is an almost complete redesign relative to Raptor 1. So basically everything from the turbo machinery to the chamber, nozzle, the electronics, basically everything's been redesigned. You can see the difference over there, the Raptor 1 versus Raptor 2. A lot of the changes were deleting things. We deleted a lot, consolidated a lot. The rotating machinery, especially the inducers of the turbo pumps, are a lot more robust. We converted a bunch of flanges to welds, and we're actually over time will convert even more flanges to welds. I hate flanges, especially if you've got high pressure and a cryogenic fluid or super hot gas. Flanges and seals are a nightmare, and so we've got parts of that engine that are sort of 700-800 bar, sort of 11,000-12,000 psi, which is nutty, and so just going to welded joints instead of flanges was pretty helpful. The pre-burner controllers have been consolidated into a sort of unified box as opposed to being kind of like all over the engine. And we're getting close to the point where I think Raptor will not need shrouds. So shrouds are a huge pain in the ass, like basically putting a whole shield around the engine, especially for the Gimballing engines, where it's got to kind of have like a sort of eyeball seal, like it's like rotating in a circle with a hot gas seal. With a bit more deletion and integration, I think the engine will be sort of flame proof, more or less, and then we can get rid of the shrouds, which would be a big mass savings. Yeah. So a lot more could go on. We're also operating at a higher chamber pressure. I think we can probably operate. I think over time we can operate it at 330 bar sustained in the main chamber, and without having the pre-burner pressures be too high, by essentially not by losing less pressure. It's like a whole pressure ladder going from the turbo pumps and pre-burners to the main chamber, and by getting rid of a bunch of the choke points, we can have less pressure loss, and so the pumps can effectively produce more pressure in the main chamber due to less loss in the secondary systems. Do you have any? Have specific questions or?
Sorry, Chris Gephardt with NASA Spaceflight. Can you talk a little bit about the abort modes that are available for ship if there were ever to be a problem during the climb to orbit? What would be available to the crew in that regard? And also on that same level, the life support systems for ship. Where do those stand, and what are the challenges that you're finding with just the sheer volume in Starship for that? Thank you.
So Starship will not have an independent abort system, but I think something that would make sense is to have the thruster weight of the ship be enough that it could do it could take off from the booster, even if the booster has a failure at the pad level. So if you get the thrust to weight of the ship at sea level above 1, then even if there is something goes wrong with the booster, the ship can essentially fly away from the booster. And so that's something that I think would be important for carrying people, and also for high-value cargo.
Ако тръст to weight е едно, мисля, че това е когато корабът просто може да виси във въздуха на една и съща височина. Ако е малко над едно, кораба не би се отделил достатъчно бързо от бустера, че да не понесе щети от взрива, ако има проблем с бустера. Трябва да над едно но заедно над едно, за да може бързо да се отдели от бустера. Както между другото драконите страшно бързо могат да се отделят от Falcon 9-ите. Много бързо и рязко. Може вътре астронавтите да припаднат, но не участват в експлозията на бустера, ако се стигне до там. Това не се е случва между другото никога за момент. Но има такава система, ако се случи.
Sort of a renewable, like for long, you know, we could scale up the life support system in Dragon. That would certainly be an option, and that would work for missions that are, say, a week or 2 weeks. That would be fine. For missions to Mars, you'd want a life support system that is renewable. Or it's essentially recycling everything in a closed loop system with close to zero lost mass. So that would be a more advanced system because you'd have to convert the CO2 back into O2 and kind of recycle poop and urine and stuff. Yeah. So that's a harder problem, but it's not an immediate problem. We can certainly scale up Dragon for any kind of missions that are, you know, a few weeks long.
Hi, Elon. Eric Berger with Ars Technica. Thanks for taking some questions. I'm wondering if you do get that approval from the FAA in March. I know that there's really no way of knowing, but could you talk a little bit about the hardware readiness, sort of where you are technically? You know, the launch tower is pretty incredible, but sort of the rocket, the ground systems, software. Like if you were to get some kind of approval from the FAA in March, you know, would you be looking at, you know, how quickly could the hardware be ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're close to having the hardware ready to go. So right now, I think we're tracking to have the regulatory approval and hardware readiness around the same time.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
How much is that message?
Yeah, around the same. You know, hopefully, you know, basically a couple months for both.
И 2 месеца, пак аз ми впечатляващо супер скоро е.
Yeah.
Да изстрелят ракети.
Hi, Seth Krakowski with SpaceExport.com. You mentioned launching from the sea. Could you give us an update on the current status of using Phobos and Deimos for Starship operations?
Yeah, so Phobos and Deimos thus far have been a relatively low priority. We needed to make the launch site here work. This has been, you know, quite a difficult endeavor. So we deprioritized the Phobos and Deimos. And just last month, we started to. We're going to take one of them and build at least a catch tower on it. So, and ultimately we will. Ultimately meaning, like, I don't know, later this year, build a full launch capability
later this year for Moscow
on one of the platforms. So I think hopefully by the end of this year we will have a launch capability at Cape Kennedy at 39A and on one of the ocean platforms as well.
Hi, Ellen. This is Adam Cardona with CBS4 and NBC23 here in the Rio Grande Valley. This is more of a community-based question. This past week, several VISD students, community leaders, and community members got together to ask you a question and to show their gratitude. Not sure if you got that message yet, but they were saying thank you, Elon, and they wanted to know if you would be able to attend their Chatham Days festivities here in Brownsville. So on behalf of them, will you be attending Chatham Days?
It sounds like fun, so like, when is it?
I believe it starts on the 19th through the 25th. So you have several days to attend Sombrero Festival, Chatham Days parades, enjoy some great food. Will we see you there?
I will be there.
All right.
That's going to be hard to follow up. Hey, Elon. Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut here. Okay, so a little bit more Raptor 2 talk again. Where are you at as far as production? How many do you have? Are they handling, testing? Are they more cantankerous, less cantankerous? Just give us a little more rundown, like on where you're actually at. Is that a bottleneck for the next booster as well? We assume the next booster is going to require, Raptor 2. So, kind of where are you at with the production and the testing so far?
Well, I mean, right now, of any technical problem, I'm spending the most time personally on Raptor 2. Like really, they're like the two things that occupy the most number of mental cycles are Raptor 2 and Tesla full self-driving. The only remaining issue that we're aware of is melting the chamber. So that thing really wants to melt, It's got like on the order of a gigawatt of heat, so it's pretty hot. Like a gigawatt's like what a nuclear power plant produces, so it really is desperately trying to melt at any point in time. We've got, we're flowing an immense amount of cryogenic fuel to cool the chamber in the channels. We have head-end film cooling, we've got throat film cooling, and we're just trying to get the exact sort of balance between head-end film cooling and throat film cooling to not melt the chamber. I think we're pretty close. Like we have a couple engines in the stand that have I think 700 or 800 seconds of operation and several start cycles. So it's looking positive, but that's the remaining issue is melting the chamber. But in the meantime, we're scaling up old production to get to 1 a day or better. So apart from melted chambers, we're doing well. We've got a lot of pumps, a lot of electronics, a lot of pre-burner controllers. Just not melting the chamber, which is very difficult, is the kind of the last remaining challenge. But I think we're very close to solving that. And then the production system has a lot of momentum. Like I said, we're really, like next week we'll probably make at least 5 or 6 Raptor 2s, for example.
Много нещата са се забързали доста. Имаше голяма драма преди 2-3 месеца за това колко бързо могат да произвеждат двигателите и някои хора даже бяха уволнени.
These are crazy numbers for rocket engines, by the way.
Не живеем в 80-те и нещата трябва да случат страшно бързо.
Hi, Elon. Robert Perlman with Space.com and Collect Space. You mentioned the NASA contract for the human landing system. At one point, do you envision splintering off development of Starship for HLS, or how are you going to balance the timelines of rapid reusability versus NASA's own schedule of when they're ready to go to the moon?
I don't think there's really a conflict there. We're going to be making a lot of ships, a lot of boosters, obviously a lot of engines. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like with the booster with 33 engines and the ship with 9 engines, it's 42. There we go again. And that was a total coincidence.
да очакват нас.
Adding legs to land on the moon, we do not think is like that can be done pretty quickly. So I don't really see any conflict between achieving rapid reusability and getting to the moon. Yeah. A high production rate solves many ills. So we're aiming for a high production rate.
Hi, Lauren Grush with The Verge. I'm wondering if you can clarify the number of launches that you plan to conduct in order to do these refillings. I know a lot of numbers have been thrown around, so I'm wondering if you have landed on a final number, and how quickly do you plan to launch those missions back-to-back to refuel the vehicle to get to the moon? Thanks.
Yeah, so the missions would happen pretty fast for refilling the vehicle to minimize boil-off of the cryogenic propellants. Now for the vehicle going to the moon, we have some insulation to minimize boil-off. But we'd probably be launching, I don't know, probably every few hours, aspirationally. So, yeah.
Hi, Elon. Kevin Haymeyer from Space Eccentric on YouTube and Rumble. Thank you. My viewers are really hungry to know anything about the interior design for crewed Starship. You have HLS, you have Dear Moon, and last we heard, maybe a year or two ago, you were looking to hire Tesla employees to design the interior for Starship. How's that going?
Well, we aren't focusing a lot on the interior quite yet, and that will be important down the road. Our focus right now is getting to orbit,
за последните часа 15 минути. Очаквах, че и той има подкаст. Много хора си изкарват парите, правят клипчета за SpaceX. Аз си изкарвам парите като учител, защото това нищо не изкарвам. Обаче да, мислих, че са разпределени по други стримове. Те най-вероятно са. Обаче си мислих, че конкретно той е някой от хората, които стримват.
Like I said, we'll have a high production rate, so we're not dependent on full reusability, but really that's the breakthrough that's fundamentally important to change the course of human civilization to become a multi-planet species.
Elon, this will be the last question for you.
Evening, Elon. Bob Duncan. I'm a local resident. Are we cutting out? Is that better? Hi, evening. My name is Bob Duncan. I'm a local resident here in the area. And first off, thank you for a very cool evening. So this has been a lot of fun for us. As the local resident, it's been exciting to watch the amazing progress that SpaceX has made here in Boca Chica. And I was just curious. We're standing on the southern tip of the state of Texas. We're a few hundred yards from your residence. Could you just speak to what, if anything, has been appealing or advantageous about operating in the state of Texas versus other parts of the country? Thank you.
Well, I think well, I mean, we've had a lot of support from the community, and something that just happens over time with societies is that kind of rules and regulations build up, and they build up, more in some places than others, and they didn't, I think Texas has the right amount of rules and regulations. Yeah. So, well, thank you all for coming. I hope you've enjoyed the evening, and I think we might be able to get you closer to the rocket if you'd like. And so we'll get you as close as possible while still being safe. Yeah, feel free to take pictures, have a good time, and let's go like hell to have an exciting future. Thank you.
Опасявам се, че ние няма да се приближим повече до ракетата, или поне не сега, а примерно по-късно днес, когато всичките тези хора почнат да снимат в интернет. Тъй като с това си изчерпва презентацията на Спейсекс. Благодаря на всички, които бяхте с мен по нощите, за да я гледаме на живо. Много се радвам. Вашето участие е страхотно, защото всички ще могат да гледат по-късно днес, когато слънцето изгрее и в България стане ден. Надявам се, че много хора ще гледат тогава и надявам се, че въпросите, които ми задавахте, ще им интересни. И че с това ви оставям за тази сутрин и до следващия път. Чао!